All right. So pleased to have with us here on Under the Ring today, Matt Taven. Matt, so good to see you.
It's so good to talk to you again. It feels like it's been a little bit longer than our normal schedule when we do our every bi-yearly interview or so.
I looked it up. The last time was actually in the theater at Madison Square Garden the day before you won the Ring of Honor championship.
So we're almost 3 years to the day of our last. So we were overdue for sure.
Definitely, definitely. It kind of blew my mind researching you that you wrestled in Ring of Honor for basically 13 years and have been under contract for about 9. Uh, when
10.
10, wow. So when
Oh.
things changed and things obviously changed at the end of last year, what are your overall feelings about your run there?
Huh, that's an interesting question. I feel proud in many ways. At the same time, I definitely feel like there's so much to prove still, and like I'm still fighting very much for it. And what I mean by that is that, like, say what you want about what ended up happening with Ring of Honor, and a lot of people like to put that blame on my shoulders, and I have no problem taking that head on. At the time, we had just lost the guys who we basically built the company around for the previous couple of years. And, 7, 9, like all these are like almost half the roster in one night. And I can vividly remember the shows directly after that, the houses being down and stuff. And going into Madison Square Garden, we had already saw what the first couple of months were before that, and I really felt like, all right, I have no problem, taking whatever heat comes with this. And I felt like, besides for one match, maybe I am very extremely proud of what I did with the Ring of Honor World Title. But the time that it happened, I feel like it maybe doesn't get the attention that I feel like it deserves, or the appreciation, or just the respect in general. It's one of those things that I think, for me personally, I've always taken things to drive me, to get me up in the morning, almost that Michael Jordan. I took that personally too. So like I take everything pretty to heart, and I feel very much proud of what I've done. So when I hear anyone question that, I'm like, all right, well, I'll put it, you go back and watch it. I'll put it up against anyone. So I constantly have that feeling in the back of my mind. So when I'm asked about this grand picture about my Ring of Honor run, it's oddly very much focused there, because I feel like I'm still fighting that battle. So with all the things that I ended up doing there that were absolutely yeah, I look back and I'm almost in awe of it, because I had such a great time there, and was able to do so much. I mean, right from the beginning, winning the top prospect tournament and the television championship, but me and Mike proving a lot of people wrong and winning those tag titles, and being able to go back and forth with Ring of Honor and New Japan, and then coming back from injury and doing the 6-man title run. Like, there's so many things to be proud of. Um, and right now, with things changing so much, I I feel like I'm constantly uh, thinking of how it ended more than how it went. So I'm sure maybe years down the line I'll be able to appreciate it more. But right now, when you when you ask that question, I haven't been asked that question, so it made me feel all sorts of ways. So I mean, that's about as honest as I can get. I think when I down the line, when I sit back and look at it, things probably, I'll appreciate them more. I'll appreciate them more, but I think right now I'm still fighting that battle of something to prove. And especially with the last, the pandemic years, there were so many good things that happened in Ring of Honor, not just for myself, but for other people that were there as well, that I feel like just doesn't get the credit that it deserves. So it's one of those things where right now, I definitely feel like there's just like a thing, like a defensive provingness, however I can say that, when I think back on Ring of Honor. But at the same time, everything's just so fresh.
I totally agree with you in terms of you put your body of work up against anybody else's. I think the story of Ring of Honor as a company is not, exclusive to the way that things ended there. I think there's a lot of decisions that were made that
Yeah.
led to where we are right now, which is them obviously acquired by Tony Khan and things being completely different. So uh, I was in the house, as you know, when you won that Ring of Honor championship against Jay Lethal and Marty Skrull. That was a great moment for you, and that was pretty much the high point of the company's history. So I think you've got that to kind of
Yeah,
hang
and
your hat on the mantle with.
no matter how hard people try, they can never take that away from me. The Madison Square Garden is in the history books, and I'm in my office right now, and I'm able to. It's not on camera, but look at a plaque that was made for me by Madison Square Garden. Actually, this ticket right here is the if you sell out the Garden, the headliners get these Tiffany's platinum tickets to MSG. And which is I had no idea. And then a couple of months after MSG, me, Lethal, and Marty were given those, and it was like, man, that's even cherry on top. So it's an experience that is definitely probably the peak of my career, but I never want to say that because that's just things are still going. Who knows what is going to happen after this? And so like as of right now, that's definitely such a pinnacle that it's one of those things I can always rest my hat on.
That big match you and Mike Bennett had with the Briscoes at Final Battle, what was that match like for you? I mean, obviously an incredible match, and just knowing what the situation was at that time too, it had to be complete emotional roller coaster. But just producing that match, and then I think you also got back in the ring with them recently for NWA too, right?
Yeah, the NWA experience was totally different. It was almost like a happier experience, and as much as I don't want to take away from the Final Battle match and say I wasn't happy, but it was just a heavy night in general. And it's exactly, if I never step foot in a Ring of Honor ring, and who knows what will happen there. Um, if that's my last match ever in a Ring of Honor ring, I'm so unbelievably proud that that's how it ended, because there's no better humans than the Briscoes. There's no better opponents for Mike and I than the Briscoes. I have a giant scar in my head from 6 staples that I had to get one night in Atlanta after wrestling the Briscoes. But it's they bring us to a whole nother level. And when we knew we were heading into Final Battle with that, we knew actually before we got the news about everything else. So we were all excited to kind of, we had all these plans, and then all of a sudden it was like, no, it'll be one and that's it. And it was kind of, the 4 of us all looked at each other like we're going to go all out tonight. And it's one of my favorite matches of my career, and I'm so unbelievably proud of it. It's one of those things that you can't wait to do again. So who knows where that'll happen again, where we can go full boat. When it happened at NWA, it was a TV match is under 10 minutes, I think, but still I ask anyone to go out there right now. It's on the NWA's YouTube and check it out, because anytime the OGK and the Briscoes are in the ring, it's those 4 guys are going to give it their all, and they really bring out something special in one another. So it's one of those things where I almost look at like maybe Final Battle should have been the last time we ever wrestled, but you could never get sick of that. And so we'll obviously see each other down the line. But Final Battle will be one of those matches that when people ask me to kind of sum up my career, that match has to be on the list for sure.
Now, you worked in ROH throughout the entire. You were still with the company during the whole wacky year that was 2020. Which had to be completely bizarre. That had to be probably the least amount of matches you've worked in your career. Just
Very strange.
What was that like to adjust and then kind of adjust to coming back?
A wild time. And like still looking back on it, it's just one of those times where you're like, I can't, what was going on there? Honestly, it was probably one of the toughest times of my career personally, just because I was coming back from injury. First off, I left with ankle surgery. I came back. I was in the middle of the Vincent angle, and when you haven't wrestled in that long and then you go out there and you wrestle, it does a number on your body. Like, it's almost better to wrestle consistently because you just get used to it. You almost get calcified. But after I'd taken that break off for Ring of Honor, I'd taken the break for so long, it definitely, you felt it. And when no crowd being there, they have no adrenaline to kind of, you hit that mat and it's like, oh, nothing's getting me up right now.
Yeah.
It's a different scenario for sure. I mean, towards the end of one of the last tapings, I remember we wrestled Flip Gordon and PJ Black, and they do their tag move to me, their Canadian Destroyer, Doomsday Canadian Destroyer. And I remember hitting the mat, and it was like 10 o'clock in the morning. And after the match, I remember rolling and looking at the camera, and I said, this could be the worst morning of my life. And I mean, honestly, like, it was a battle going out there and wrestling with no crowd. I mean, thankfully it's over with, and it's what we had to do. It's not something that I'm necessarily wish we didn't do or would have said no to. Looking back on it, I would always prefer wrestling's about being in front of a crowd and having their reaction. So that's always what I would prefer. But you got to do what you got to do in unforeseen circumstances. And I think we made the most of it. I was really proud of what Ring of Honor was doing during the pandemic, between the Pure tournament and what Jonathan Gresham was doing, the foundation, myself and Vincent we're doing, we had a 2-year story going, and a pandemic just happened right as we were getting going, and we did our best to keep things rolling during all that time. And just Dalton Castle, every time he's in front of the screen, Jay Lethal just killing it every time he's in front of a screen. It's just it was one of those things where I think maybe that goes back to the first question, where I'm still a little defensive about the way the Ring of Honor ended, because I know that a lot of people probably weren't picking up a lot of the great stuff that we were doing during the pandemic. And especially when we didn't come back to a crowd when everyone else was, I'm sure hurt us. But you can't fault the guys for going out there and giving it their absolute best. I mean, some of my favorite angles and work happened during the pandemic time. And so I hope that one day, especially with Ring of Honor being in new hands, that maybe one day that time period can be highlighted, or whatever ends up happening with that library can be in a spot where people can go back and enjoy that time. Because there's some really, really unbelievable and just some unbelievable matches that happened during that. I mean, the whole Pure tournament is so good. But just Gresham and Dak Draper, Brian Johnson, like, there's so many guys that when everything happened with Ring of Honor, my heart really went out to, because they were just catching some steam. And it's hard because even a guy like myself, who's now going out there and doing different things, you're labeled so much as being a Ring of Honor guy that you almost have to go out and find a new identity. And so it definitely, it makes me feel some kind of way when I think about the amount of good stuff that happened during that time period. And the guys that were really working their butts off. I hope that one day they get the credit for what they did.
And wrestling's all about timing, too, place and time, and you have to find the momentum that you have. Like you mentioned, all those guys that were doing a great job, and congratulations to you guys for what you did pull off during the pandemic. And
Thank you.
Because it was impressive. But yeah, you hope that somebody was watching, and there's only a certain number of people that can create those opportunities right now, unfortunately. So
of course. And even as a fan myself, I've been a wrestling fan since I was 6 years old. I've loved this thing for my entire life. But watching a wrestling match with no crowd is not the same, even for someone like me. So, like, I understood how hard that was, not just for the wrestlers, but for the fans. But like I said, there's so much good stuff that happened that hopefully one day it can get the credit it deserves.
A few weeks ago on this show, Court Bauer mentioned from MLW that maybe the empty arena match is what maybe the empty arena match is when we need to put on the shelf for a little while. It was cool when Jerry Lawler and Terry Funk did it, but
yeah,
I feel like we've seen hundreds of them at this point. It's time for it to go away now for a little bit.
Bingo, you know what I mean? If every single match was like that, it wouldn't be as special. So it's one of those things where it's like we used up all these tricks that we had in our bag during the pandemic, and now it's time to get back to wrestling.
So you're in Impact Wrestling now, part of the Honor No More group. What has that experience been like with all the former Ring of Honor guys? And I know you've got Rebellion and the Impact TV coming to Poughkeepsie on the 23rd and the 24th as well. So just how do you sum up Impact and that run so far?
I mean, it's this whole thing's been such a crazy experience for me, just because, like we talked in the beginning, and even before that, my first dark match in Ring of Honor was in 2009. So I was working underneath during that time. 2012, things start to kind of pick up a little bit of steam for me at Ring of Honor, and I've been there ever since. And so when you're out there, and especially when you're like a free agent and you can kind of do whatever, you're testing all these different places. And right now, we have something going on with Impact, and you never know what you're going to get into when you go to a new place. I mean, there's this weird anxiety of like, oh man, I've been so comfortable in this locker room for so long. What's this going to be like? But when you walk into the door at Impact, there's so many familiar faces that it felt like another day. It almost felt like, a Ring of Honor show in 2015 or something, where I'm looking around, it's Eddie and Moose and just everyone, Saban, Shelly. It's like, oh, okay. And, so many familiar faces that you have spent time with in wrestling. And I guess that's one of the beautiful things about wrestling, is that you see people, I'll see you down the road, is not just something that people just say to each other just to say it. It's because it's true. Sometimes you're like, I don't know when I'm going to see him next. And now I see him all the time. So it's been an easy adjustment to Impact because of that. Obviously being there with me, Mike, and Maria, teaming up with Eddie, having Vinny there, Kenny King and myself are very good friends. PCO has always had a soft spot in my heart for big PCO. So it's kind of cool to be there together and to be kind of going through all this new phase together. The group very much has this New England Mafia feel to it, because myself, Eddie, Vinny, Mikey, we used to wrestle all around this area. And now we're heading back up to Poughkeepsie, a place that I know very well because of my time at Northeast Wrestling. And, my first time in the Mid-Hudson Civic Center, I won the Northeast Wrestling title. And the last person that I ended up pinning that night was Mike Bennett. So it's like these weird circles that you do in wrestling where things they come full circle. And so after, oh man, that's over 10 years ago, the first time I was in the Civic Center, now to come back, but under the Impact banner. And now, me and Mike have been around the world at this point, and we're this team. And it's like, so many years have gone by, but it's the same place, but a totally different experience. So I'm really looking forward to what Poughkeepsie has in store for us. Rebellion in the day after for the taping. And hopefully I see a lot of familiar faces, because luckily through Northeast Wrestling, and we met through Northeast Wrestling. And it's one of those things where right now I feel like I'm at a turning point in my career, almost like a midpoint. You look back at a lot of things that kind of helped you along the way, and I wouldn't be anywhere without Northeast Wrestling, and the exposure that company and everything Michael Lombardi's done for me is I could never repay. And so now to be coming back into that building under an Impact banner, it's almost like one of those things where you're like, I need to thank, Northeast and Michael for everything that they've done for me over all these crazy years. I mean, everything that I did internationally at Ring of Honor and now at Impact, NWA, or wherever I end up, all that kind of gets launched by Michael Lombardi and Northeast Wrestling. And a big part of that was the Mid-Hudson Civic Center.
You just skipped to about 5 different points on my note sheet right now, just to let you know.
I'm all over the place.
The first time I saw you wrestle was actually that 5-way with you, and that's the first time I saw Bennett also. It was you guys and Brian Anthony, Jason Blade, and Paul London. Wrote that one down because that was the NAW championship match at the Civic Center, and that was 2010, I want to say.
Oh, don't say that. You make me feel so old.
And I remember I spoke to Cedric Alexander because I think he was also the second match on that card against Jaleel Salam, and that was his NEW debut. And I don't think he was supposed to even work that night because he said somebody else didn't show up, and he just happened to have his gear, and he was working for High Spots at the time.
So think about how many good, talents. I mean, obviously, Northeast, and Michael does a great job of bringing in stars. But to think of how many guys have come out of the Northeast wrestling, area, and just you listed them all off right there. But then there's the Dijaks and the Flip Gordons and the Warbeard Hansons, and of course these guys have been all over the place, especially in the New England area. But there is no place in the area like the Mid-Hudson Civic Center, especially for that level. Like I, as a fan, I vividly remember, and I'm even more excited to go back now because just recently Scott Hall passing, and that's the spot where he came out to like the Fuji's entrance at ECW. But I can remember the Mid-Hudson Civic Center for the TNA stuff, and before that, Superstars or Raw would be filmed there, and it's like it's one of those things where, especially a guy like me who grew up a wrestling fan, who probably was saying, "Oh, I'm at the Mid-Hudson Civic Center and I'm destroying my parents' furniture as I'm jumping around or whatever, imitating what I'm seeing on TV," which don't do that, kids. It's one of those things that it never gets old. It's always so cool to go back to those spots. And now that I've been doing this for a while, like I said, you look back at the first couple of times you've been there, and how cool it is to come back now.
Can you kind of take me through your journey with Mike Bennett? We mentioned, the match you had with him in Poughkeepsie years back, but you guys have been a team for a long time. Where did you guys first hook up, and kind of what have you gotten to this point?
Crazy, because Mike's one of the first people that I really met in wrestling. I was kind of kicking around for a little bit. I had met Vinny, which is funny. And excuse me. And I started training at Spike School. And Mike was one of those guys that, me and Mike are roughly the same age, but I didn't start till I was 23 years old. And Mike started when he was 15. So like he
Wow.
was, one of those guys that had 8 years experience when I was starting, and looked like $1,000,000 and was all over the place in New England. And you couldn't go anywhere without hearing his name, and just looked like a guy that should be on TV as a professional wrestler. And I remember thinking like, all right, this guy's kind of figured it out. He's on the right path here. And then we met, and I think my first or second match with the promotion that I trained at Top Rope Promotions was a tag match that had Mike Bennett in it on the other side. And he totally took care of me, and he was like the coolest dude in the world. And then I think we might have like, oh, let's go out to the bar or whatever afterwards. And we just instantly became friends. I mean, Mike's a very easygoing person. It's funny because I always say we're yin and yang, but we balance each other. Mike's nice. I always say to his own detriment, where I'm a little prickly sometimes. So, we definitely balance each other out. And it's funny because I don't think me and Mike have ever been in a real argument. We always joke about this. Like, we've never been in like an FU, like, oh, whatever, screw off type fight. We always seem to kind of know each other enough to balance each other out, like I said. So we ended up meeting and becoming pretty instant friends, right from the beginning for me. And luckily, he was kind of going places, and I took advantage of advice that I tell anyone that asks me, and advice that I heard a million times. Jump in the car with someone. If you have nothing going on, and take your bag with you, jump in the car. If someone's going to a show that you're trying to get on, hey, go with them, help out, introduce yourself. There's nothing like seeing someone in person and being able to meet them face to face. It goes a long way. So I was kind of doing that, and things broke for me at Northeast, and they were bringing Mike in at the same time, and we kind of like were instant rivals, and we wrestled each other all over the Northeast for what seemed like 2 years. And Mike then started kind of breaking in around that Mid-Hudson Civic Center show, breaking in with Ring of Honor. And I did the same thing. I would just jump in the car with him and just kind of show my face and wait for an opportunity. And when that day came, I took advantage of it. And then we find ourselves in this weird spot in Ring of Honor where Mike definitely felt like he wanted to change something up. And I was coming off the television title run where I was leaving a group that I was in. So I needed to kind of redefine myself. And it was wrestling's all about timing. And it just made sense in real life. Me, Adam Cole, and Mike were all friends. So it made sense to put us together as the Kingdom. And when me and Mike started teaming, it was just one of those things that we knew each other so well from wrestling each other for so long at Northeast or and these other independents throughout the country, that we clicked instantly and really kind of were able to get our footing quickly. And I look back at some of our early tag matches and I think like, oh, we were terrible. But in comparison to teams that have been doing it for a while, we had chemistry just because of our past, that we were able to get in there with some of the top teams and hold our own. And things just really snowballed quickly. The three of us, me, Mike, and Maria, were able to go all over the world. But, working with teams like the Young Bucks and the Briscoes and the Good Brothers, it's going to do nothing but make you better. And so we got good quick. Yeah. And then wrestling happens. In one night, Mike leaves for TNA, I blow out my ACL, and all plans that were on the table are just poof, gone. But I think the true mark of a friendship is if you stay friends, during these tough times. And me and Mike never missed a beat. And when he went other places, we would always be talking. And, when I came back to Ring of Honor, we would be texting, checking up on one another, watching each other's stuff, giving each other feedback, always kind of pushing each other to do what we knew from being with each other for so long, where we wanted to be. So he's just a true friend through and through. And it's one of those things where you're always plotting in the back of your mind, like, oh, if we ever team again, we'll do this or we'll do that. And I think Mike's, he still very much like me feels like he has a lot to prove, a little chip on his shoulder. And definitely, I think Mike looks back at our first run and thinks about all the things that he would have done different. He was at a different point in his life. And so now we're looking at it as like, let's do them all again. Let's do it right. And let's enjoy it this time. So we're just getting that started. You know what I mean? We're at the NWA, we're at Impact, and we're looking to do just that, make an impact, because if you can get back in the ring with someone after 5 years and it's like you never missed a day, you're almost better than you were before, you're like, okay, this is a team that's meant to be together. So as much as we definitely have things that we want to do individually, I mean, for sure, those goals are still very much on the table. We know anytime we team up, we're good to go. And we have a lot of tag team goals that we're looking to reach as well.
Very good. And you guys also started a wrestling school at one point together?
We did. So a couple things happened, and the pandemic really kind of closed the doors on it for now. But we had the Wrestling Kingdom in Rhode Island, where we're able to, some of my favorite times, honestly, because so many people help you along the way. I mean, maybe it's different for other people, but for me, there's been so many people that have helped me. And even if they're not necessarily your trainer, they've given you little pieces of advice along the way. And now to be able to kind of see that come to fruition with a lot of guys that we helped out and trained, there's a Waves and Curls, who are the NEW tag champions, and they're champions everywhere right now. My man Love Doug, who's tearing it up in Beyond Wrestling. I mean, there's so many people that came through the doors there, even people that might have trained somewhere else and then came and trained at our school, that to now see them go out there. And recently I was able to come back home and kind of take a picture with a crew of guys and girls that, we helped along the way. And that's one of the coolest things of my journey in wrestling, is like, now that I'm considered a vet, which seems so weird that happens so quick in my mind. I'm able to help out in Ring of Honor. I was helping produce and do agenting stuff. And obviously me and Mike had the school, and I was helping train. And now you're seeing kind of that art of wrestling go from you into other people and keep branching out. And it makes you look back at all the people that helped you along the way and be grateful for that. So it was an amazing experience, and really it saved me in a lot of ways, because I was coming back from the knee surgery when we started the school. And so I was able to kind of get in the ring and really test it out, because that was a scary scary process. And my first match back was like in Arena, Mexico. in a new place in front of a sold out arena, Mexico. And I was like, yeah, I think I'm going to need to get in the ring a lot before this. So I was able to rehab both surgeries with the school. But at the same time, like I said, and still to this day, I was just texting a bunch of the guys last night because they'll send me their matches and I'll be able to critique them. And even with them being, kind of out of the training situation and doing other things, you keep that relationship and you keep those bonds. And that's more than you could ever ask for.
You mentioned before working in Northeast Wrestling, and you worked a lot behind the scenes too in Northeast Wrestling over the years. Different stuff you had the opportunity to do and to learn. And you always seem to find yourself back there. So you touched on it a little bit before, but just kind of what did that experience teach you, and how did it mold you?
Oof. It's one of those things where I always feel like people think they're not ready, and you'll never feel like you're ready. I always try to tell people you got to just throw yourself in the fire. See what happens. You know what I mean? And you might fall on your face, who cares? Or you might succeed, and that kind of snowball can continue to roll downhill. And that's really what happened with Northeast Wrestling. And I was able to kind of learn trial by fire. I was only a couple of months into training where just right time, right place, right opportunity. I was going there legit. This is how everything started with me in Northeast Wrestling. I was going there just to help at ring crew, and they needed someone. And all of a sudden, next thing I know, I'm in the ring with Big Daddy V Viscera. And I'm only a couple of months into training. And it was just one of those things where afterwards, I mean, I was crazy nervous, but afterwards I was like, I can do this. Like I always knew I could, but I'm even more sure now than ever. And like I said, Michael's given me such the opportunities to learn, even maybe before other people thought I was ready for him. But I was like, no, I'm going to go out there and I'm going to show you that I can hold my own out here. And luckily, sometimes I didn't, but most of the times I think I turned out on the positive side of that. And then when I was able to come back and help, I mean, two things happened. I was Northeast Wrestling champion, and I blew out my ACL and then re-signed a deal with Ring of Honor during the time I was rehabbing. But part of that was I was going to be exclusive and couldn't do independence anymore. And so it was this weird part where I was like, I guess I can't work Northeast now. And I was still rehabbing. And, thankfully, Michael Lombardi knows that not only do I love wrestling as far as in front of the camera, I love the whole part of it, everything that goes into it. And, I went to school and got a sports entertainment event management major and did my internship at a record label and worked right for the Revolution right after school and the Patriots, the Craft Sports Group. And it was at the stadium. So like the behind the scenes stuff of it was always something that I was interested in and wanted to be a part of. And thankfully, Michael gave me the opportunity to do that. And again, the biggest part of that is just helping other guys and seeing them succeed, especially in a place where it helped you out so much. So I always try to think about life down the road after wrestling, maybe not saying that that's soon, but it's just one of those things where you're like, I want to see if I'll have to completely pivot elsewhere or if I'll be able to work in wrestling forever, because even if I'm not in the ring and, the spotlight's not on me, I still love everything that goes along with that. And, to kind of be a part of that behind the scenes stuff. Michael Lombardi gave me my first opportunity to do that with Northeast. I was saying I started kind of helping out in agenting in Ring of Honor. Now is a time where so much stuff's up in the air. I really don't have the opportunity to do it as much. I'm not able to get up to Northeast and help out beyond the scene as much or as much as I would like to. So that's one of those things where I'm thankful for that experience so much, and I'm hoping I can use it again down the road.
All right, so we're going to go to something we've been calling the 3 count now. It's going to be 3 quick questions, or hopefully they're fun and entertaining. So your quick responses to them. So,
Quick.
Who's someone you've encountered in your wrestling career who could easily qualify as a Kingdom member who was never a member of the Kingdom?
Oh, there's a couple of them real quick. Dalton Castle, who's one of my closest friends in life. and Eddie Edwards. Eddie we're able to do it kind of now together, but Eddie would have been a member of the Kingdom, no doubt. He's part of that New England Mafia.
So you've been wrestling for 14 years now? And is there a person you've wrestled who people watching you now would be surprised to know that you've shared a ring with?
Surprised that I know I shared a ring with. I mean, Big Daddy V is one of them that I probably would throw up there. Who else would they surprise that? Northeast gave me so many opportunities from like Lawler and then just a million other names that it's like, you might be surprised, but if you know Northeast wrestling, you really wouldn't be. Huh. Yeah, let's go with Big Daddy V just because I'm blanking right now. So that's it. You would just think size alone. What is Matt Taven doing in the ring with this?
And you were like only a few matches in too.
Yeah, I was only a couple of months into training, so I watched that maybe a year ago, and just the look on my face in the entrance, I'm like, that's a guy who's just pooping in his pants right now.
What is your favorite big venue to wrestle in, your favorite small venue to wrestle in, and the weirdest place you have ever had a wrestling match?
Great question. All right. Biggest big venue. I mean, everyone's gonna want me to say MSG, and of course, but Arena Mexico has to be mentioned just because nothing touches the atmosphere in Arena Mexico. Man, especially when you're a bad guy there. I've gotten so much beer thrown at me. I was like 90% Tecate one night in Arena Mexico. Small venue. There's a place in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, Turner Hall, that Ring of Honor used to run. I think NXT started running there a little bit, but man, there's something about it. It's very similar to the PAL Hall in Fall River, but there's something about it, and those people get wild. And that place is awesome. Weirdest place I've ever wrestled, and I joke around about this all the time, was a Whole Foods parking lot. And I believe I was I must have been like 3 or 4 months in, and I had no idea what. I just was told, hey, there's a show in East Providence at the time. And when I got there and I saw the address, I was like, this is a Whole Foods. And so I'm walking through a Whole Foods with my gear bag and stuff. And I had to walk through like the little back, grocery part into like their loading dock. And I got in gear in a loading dock of a Whole Foods and then walked through the front of the store and made my entrance to the ring. So I would say the Whole Foods is one of those organically weird places.
Oh, very good. Very nicely done. I think that's going to be my new favorite question to ask now, because I feel like all veteran wrestlers have at least one that is just so outlandish.
And I'm sure there's more, like we really want to sit down about it, but like that's the one that instantly I'm like, I wrestled in a Whole Foods parking lot, so don't tell me about it.
So for people who might have stopped watching Impact at different times, just kind of, if you could sum up kind of like what you like about the current product and maybe what makes it different for people who might have checked out of Impact and might not be that familiar with it right now.
I think Impact's doing some great things right now, and watching the television, I mean, the production alone and just, the editing and just watching the product, it's so well done. I mean, it looks so professional, and there's just so many good things going on right now between Josh Alexander, Honor No More coming in. Josh Alexander and Moose have had this thing going on for so long. And then just all the other guys from Cardona and Morrissey coming in. It's just like there's almost a competition to get on TV because there's so many good things going on. The Bullet Club being there, that's the best time to watch, because these guys are going to go out there and bust their ass and do literally everything they can, because they see the rest of the lineup and they're trying to make their way into it. So there's just so much. It's like a log jam right now at Impact. There's so much talent. I mean, the Motor City Machine Guns are back. It's like there's all these moving parts, and that's the best time of wrestling, when there's competition, not only between the other companies, but within the locker room itself.
All right. Well, that'll do it for us this week on Under the Ring. Matt, it is so great to catch up with you. This was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed being able to do this with you again.
Yeah, it was too long. So, we'll have to keep it to 1 or 2 years as our break in between these. Does this mean I'm going to see you at the Civic Center?
I think you will.
Oh, hell yeah. Awesome.